Okay, I guess it's my turn now, right?
Yep.
This is why I don't often, Josh, tell you my tracks ahead of time, because I wrote it and then I can't remember because I was trying to decide between a bunch of different tracks this week for what I was gonna do. So, can you help me out, Josh, in terms of what I picked this week?
Uh, yes. Anyway, in the opening montage, you heard "Only the Wind," and now you're gonna hear.
Crazy. That's actually what I would have guessed.
Yeah.
I should have
Well,
just guessed and said it and had you correct me if I was wrong, Josh.
Well, you would have
That's
guessed it, John, because you actually did say it, so it's the same thing, But
all right, give me the numbers, Matt, and then I'll tell you a little bit more on that. Yeah.
All right. So "Behavior" by Pet Shop Boys comes in at number 335 in the 1990s on Best Ever Albums, number 26 in 1990, number 1,782 of all time. It is the Pet Shop Boys' second highest rated album behind 1987's "Actually," which we covered in last season, and did not make Rolling Stone's list. And the Pet Shop Boys are ranked number 381 of overall artist rankings on Best Ever Albums.
Yeah, and we did them on a cold list and hot takes. I'll give flesh out a little bit of context here. They were formed in 1981 in London. The Pet Shop Boys are two people. It's Neil Tennant and Chris Lowe, so they are a duo. This is album number 4 of, as it currently stands, 17. They keep releasing albums, so 17 might not be the end of the road, but as of now, as we're recording this in October of 2023, this is album 17, and yeah, this is number 4. Actually, it was number 2 for context and where it's at. Genres are synth pop, alternative dance, dance pop, alternative indie rock, and actually sometimes they get lumped in with house as well. And in terms of artists that they influenced and artists that influenced them, we always just do this in terms of listing them. I'm curious if you guys could figure it out, because I liked how when we did Black Crows, how that played out. So you want to guess some things on either way, artists that influenced them or artists that they influenced?
David Bowie.
Matt or Josh? I mean, that's a very, very good guess.
That is a good guess.
It is not one of the ones.
I'm just thinking of electronic, anything like Kraftwerk, but it doesn't. I mean, they're not krautrock, So
krautrock was an influence on them. So
it was
on the
okay.
Right yep.
Well, Kraftwerk,
like
okay.
People like Can and there's gonna be a quote that we talk about later that will give you some insight. So maybe
what is it? Simple Minds.
Simple Minds. Yep.
Because they were kind of around then.
Yep.
I'm just thinking of
that's a good guess, but that is not.
But those artists could also be peers.
How about The
Cure?
Cure?
Nope.
No.
The Cure was not listed. You guys, in terms of direct peers, people like Depeche Mode are brought up, and Soft Cell, and but also you hear a little bit of people. They were influenced by Roxy Music and that lane of music as well.
Yep.
Along the way, and then of course, like, what did they inspire down the road? There's a lot of electronic music and synth music in the 90s as well as currently. Famously, Lady Gaga said that she basically listened to the Pet Shop Boys almost exclusively while she was recording her debut album, The Fame. So that very much influenced her thinking.
The 1975 had to be influenced by these guys.
1975 at Weekend are both people that have dropped their name as being highly influential. And then another interesting thing is the Pet Shop Boys and Madonna have had an overlap with their careers a little bit. They have a partnership that goes back to 1988. They did a song together called Heart, and they just did a lot of stuff throughout the 80s and 90s together. So yeah, they are kind of tied together as well. And Madonna was still referencing them and doing stuff with them or using some of their material as late as 2006 during her Confessions tour. So there you go. That's a little bit of where it comes. There's another whole genre in terms of their image and their look that plays into it and stuff. But some things that are notable about them before we go in, because I think this is going to be a fun album to talk about. Tennant actually joined up with Bernard Sumner and ex-Smiths guitarist Johnny Marr. And I think we talked about this in the group Electronic, and they had a hit called Getting Away With It. So that's quite the super group right there. A member of the Smiths, a member of New Order, who also was considered a contemporary during this time, and they also ended up reconvening in 1990, and they did a medley that included U2's Where the Streets Have No Name, and Frankie Valli's Can't Take My Eyes Off You in 1991, which I did not get a chance to listen to, but I'm kind of fascinated about it. The band met in 1981 when Tennant had purchased a synthesizer, and he basically had a conversation with Chris Lowe about the synthesizer. They found out they had a mutual interest in electronic music, and then the thing that you guys missed, but that was a huge influence on them, was disco. Was a big driving force for them. And they became friends, and 2 specific albums moved them. Bedsitter by Soft Cell. Soft Cell, of course, most famous for the song Tainted Love. And Souvenir by the group Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark, or OMD. Do you guys know the big OMD song?
Sure do.
Go ahead.
It's from Pretty in Pink, If You Leave.
Yes. Yep. If You Leave, exactly. So
that's a good
two big hits right there, and they kind of took that and then went back and listened to Human League albums, Depeche Mode, and the groups that we just mentioned, along with Kraftwerk, and there you go. That's what the Pet Shop Boys were. I think famously, West End Girls was performed at the London Olympics as part of the montage, and considered to be one of the highlights as well. And they are famously known for not really having much of a public persona. They're described as kind of like detached, ambivalent are words that come up. Their shows were often derided for being low energy. They kind of just did their thing without any real showmanship. And I think one of the things that made it so interesting was that they were very much tied to the dance music scene in gay clubs at the time that was very over the top and image driven. And they almost, I would have to argue, made a conscious choice, right, to kind of strike a different pose of that, to play, no pun intended, but play it straight, right? In that, not straight in terms of sexual preference, but to play it straight in terms of the sizzle for what was going on. And that goes down all the way to discussing sexual orientation. They kind of were in that, Neil Tennant was in that George Michael, Elton John lane that there existed for a while for British artists, where like, I think everybody knew they were gay, but they sort of were still, I guess, trying to say that, not say that they were straight, but they weren't coming out and saying they were gay either. I mean, there's no shortage of, especially, it was like very much a British phenomenon, I feel like, that a lot of these people were walking sort of the sexuality lane. You know, Freddie Mercury comes to mind on that one. Morrissey, there seems to be a bunch. I'm trying to think what were like the American equivalents of that sort of like, is he gay, is he not gay lane? I can't really think of one as easily.
Mean, I don't know. It just wasn't like as talked about, but like Melissa Etheridge, I remember, I don't know if that was ever.
Well, there's a lot of
part
American women.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what it was. Maybe it was the women. You know what I mean? That we projected that onto it in England. And I can even go
Michael
back.
Stipe had that a little bit of that.
Michael
though,
Stipe
didn't he?
did have that. That's a good point, Matt. There you go. There's an American example. But yeah, so great. You answered the question, Matt. That's perfect. So that's a little bit of an overview. I'll try to weave a little bit more in when it becomes relevant into the bio. But I think...
Well, I would want to interject and say, did you the recent, as of like this week, the Pet Shop Boys commented because Drake sampled West End Girls and didn't give them credit. And
damn.
They said,
I was going to bring that up later.
Yeah.
Yep. Because you said, what are other artists that were influenced? And I was like, well, I don't know if Drake was influenced or just like West End Girls as a riff. So, yeah.
Yeah, but they put it on Twitter, put him on blast. Like, thanks for not asking permission or not like.
Well, and in fairness, that's completely fair. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
'Cause it's like your biggest hit, and they just
But I guess
gank it
Drake
with
has a habit of doing that. Also, other artists have called him out for not.
Is anybody suing him? Like, that seems like a suable offense.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
But
You have to do what like MC Hammer did last week when he borrowed. He at least cut him into like half the profits, and it's like, all right, well,
Yeah,
we'll
after he
overlook
was
the-
sued.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like that's what I think Drake's gonna have to do, right?
Oh, yeah, right, yeah.
yeah, definitely.
But go ahead, Josh. What'd you think of this one?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. It is different. I feel like they've matured some since that second album that we talked about. Actually, this has a very sophistopop sound to me. I think they use, comparing and contrasting them versus Depeche Mode is interesting because they feel so much more not subdued, but kind of like relaxed in their sound. And
Well, at this stage, remember, Depeche Mode is going for mainstream
Yeah.
stuff, right? And then
Yeah.
New Order is like taking drugs in Ibiza. So
Yeah.
they're all kind of different stages of their career, right? So that's a
Right.
good point, Josh. Yeah.
But this is like they they use the synths in such kind of like it's not in your face sound. It's they build them up very organically, and I feel like they are accompanied by things like strings, and it has a very kind of pleasant, sumptuous sound to it in a way that I didn't get with the earlier album. And it's kind of a more, I don't know, not maybe romantic, but maybe also just kind of adult sounding like dance record. It's not as like, I mean, there are some upbeat songs here, but overall this is a pretty relaxed sound to it. It's a good night album. It's also a good rainy day album. I kind of experienced it both ways and felt like it had a really nice vibe to it. It's lyrically kind of like feels like reminiscent and kind of self-disclosing in some ways, or almost like you're reading out of a diary, or philosophical, reflective in the lyrics about different things about love and where you are in life. And I think I had heard maybe one of these songs before, but there's not really any like big hits on the level of West End Girls, which I kind of immediately recognized when we talked about it. But songs like How Can You Go
It was
ahead.
designed to sound like a musical, Josh. That might be a little what you're going into. That was
Okay.
a little bit of the thematic element.
Yeah, it does kind of build nicely, and each song plays on the previous one in a natural way. But How Can You Expect to Be Taken Seriously, I think may have been the song I'd heard before. The guitar works really well in that. They use electric guitar and punctuate it with synths. I like the build on that song. Something Like Only the Wind, which John put in the montage, is kind of an example of this sumptuous sound that I feel throughout the album. And then like a musical, My October Symphony is like a symphony in like an electronic form, and it ends with strings and builds nicely. So I really I enjoyed it. I don't think it's gonna be like super high up, and it wasn't as surprising as their first album was for me, but I thought it was really well done, and I enjoyed listening to it. So thumbs up for me.
Yeah, I did not know any of the songs on this, and I don't think I knew anything from the first album. Oh wait, I think that was it, the Dusty Springfield duet that they did. I think I kind of knew that, but yeah. So I like this too. I think this is album, and I more of a, there's a couple of upbeat songs on here, but most of this is kind of mellow. It's like introspective, type sounding songs that are, well played at night, or probably a rainy day. It's kind of like more of a mellow, vibe that you're getting with this. I think I think the production's great. I think, a lot of the synths that they're using on here and the drums, it sounds really crisp and clean and really nice. I like his voice. Is it Tennant? Whoever, I forget who's the main singer, but
Yep.
I think it's Tennant. But I do like it's a distinctive voice that's not, it doesn't really seem like off-putting or abrasive or anything like that. It's its own. You can tell it's the Pet Shop Boys guy. You can tell that's his voice. So I think the upbeat songs are the ones I probably like the least, or mellower sound. Maybe The End of the World is maybe the more upbeat song that I liked the most of the upbeat songs. And I think So Hard, that was at a single. I think
like that
perhaps.
song,
Yeah, I did. There's a. It's like a James Bond kind of thing.
Yeah.
It seemed a little out of place to me, that part, so it was a little off-putting. But generally speaking, I'm a thumbs up on this. It's not. I don't think that there's any songs on here that put me over the edge is like, wow, like if we keep talking about Depeche Mode, and that Violator had several songs that was like, okay, different level, like just elite song right here. I didn't really find that here. I find that this is just to be generally a collection of pretty good songs, pretty decent songs that I like the production and the sound on. And I think that's just kind of how it's going to stay with me. That's not. I think the beginning of the album is stronger too than the end. I think there's a couple of it loses its step a little bit here and there. But overall, there's nothing offensive or wrong with this album. It's just I don't think there are a ton of hooks that grab me in or make it more memorable for me. But it's still enough for me to give it a thumbs up, at the same time. So yeah, so it's slightly mixed, but generally speaking, it's a pretty solid record. And I think I like the first one that we covered better than this, but this does have I think you're right, Josh. This is a little bit more of a mature, adult sounding, record, which is fine. I like it. I like it when bands do that. But yeah, it's. I could put it on here and there, but I think probably more times than not, this album for me would fade into being more background music and more of like a soundscape kind of a thing, rather than me being fully engaged with what they're doing. So if that makes sense. So, but yeah, I'm still thumbs up on it.
Yeah, I think I was a little higher on this album than you guys were. I really liked the change of pace and the. You guys mentioned two things that I put in my notes too. Josh mentioned that it was like reading someone's diary, and I understand what he's going for, because I felt very connected to the lyrics and the sound here. There was a somberness, but not a depressing somberness, more of like a seriousness and a world weariness that gave this album a fair amount of heft, and thus it wasn't background music for me, Matt. I think because it seemed it demanded my attention a little bit more, because I was like, oh, this is someone sharing with me. And I wouldn't call it earnest, but it was honest and in its own way, emotional, and I kind of picked up pretty quickly that the first song lyrically, when I read about it, seemed to be about AIDS, and knowing sort of the background of the band, right, coming out of dance clubs, especially gay clubs. There were a lot of folks that were lost in that era, right, to that type of story. And immediately it sort of set the tone to me. Some of it seemed to be about love affairs, and I did notice that it was written in a way that kind of like a song like Hand in Glove was and stuff too, that you're living the duality, right, of having a traditional love affair, but also sort of on the down low or outside of the mainstream a little bit, and sort of that feeling of not emptiness, but how you connect and connecting on the fringes a little bit. I got that sonically, like Only the Wind was a really good example of that. It's like a longing song. It's a really beautiful song, actually, too. How can you expect to be taken seriously as the single on this one? And that's as close to a dancey song, I guess, as they have on this album, but I don't get the feeling they were trying to make a dance album here. And it's also, so much of 1990 was about making dance songs, and to some degree this is the opposite of that Depeche Mode album, Matt. And I don't disagree with you that the singles on Violator are these huge hits, right, and these big pieces, but it's hard to compare it to that, because I don't think the Pet Shop Boys were going for that on the
clearly
and they
not.
absolutely can write songs like West End Girls and the song with Dusty Springfield, and so they had the ability, right, to write these big chart topping hits. But I feel like we caught the group, the two of them, especially the songwriter, at the period where they were contemplative, and looking at the world. And I was kind of curious to see, like, this came out in 1990. I was curious to see like how old they were at this point in time, because I was like, I wonder, where they were at in life. And at this point, Neil Tennant was 36 years old, which was a lot older than I would have thought he would have been, right? And then Chris Lowe would have been 31. And it sounds like an album in which middle age is coming a little bit, and I was like, wow, that really does connect, because that's kind of a little bit what it sounds like for me. And
Yeah, it sounds more mature, this album.
yeah, I know what you guys mean with the sophistopop and the mood music, because it has the elements and the hallmarks of that. You could easily put this in the same lane as Roxy Music, right? And Roxy Music Avalon was an album I really loved, and there were some elements here, and certainly that that sophistopop, or the adult British synth music that was huge in the early 80s and the mid 80s. There's elements of this here, but I really connected with this album, and it's a pretty strong thumbs up for me. And I appreciated the turn and the seriousness of it, and the vulnerability of this album too. It's not giving you answers, it's kind of posing questions to you, or embracing the uncertainty might be a better way to describe it. So yeah, I like this one. Thumbs up for me.
And I think you did a good job of describing all that, John. And there's times where this type of thing, like that mature, the introspective, yes, it's like looking at it, it's like, oh, I'm approaching middle age, and things are changing, and I'm looking at life differently, and that type of thing, and how that translates to the music. I think there's a lot of times where that resonates with me, but it's just this was more. I liked it, but it never got over that next level for me, just musically. But I do like the sonic nature of it. I do like it's very pleasant. It's very easy to listen to. And so I liked it for that, but I just wasn't able to really connect with it on that level for some reason.
Well, it's interesting because Neil Tennant in particular is very outspoken about not liking rock music, not liking country music, not liking traditional pop music. And so from that end of things, he's sort of similar to the krautrock artists who are trying to create their own genre outside the mainstream. That's why it's so funny we did the Black Crowes, right? And then this, because talk about both ends of the spectrum in terms of embracing or running away from the blues rock lineage. The one thing I want to mention at the end of this too is this is a very British album. It sounds British. And I don't really know how to quantify what I mean with that, but we're going to have to reconcile with that, because I think we're going to be saying that more as we get into the 90s because of things like Britpop and the dance music that's coming out of Europe and European leaning. But to me, this also didn't feel we're three Americans, right? This veered more from something that would have been influenced by American music. It felt more European. I don't know if that means it sounds a little bit more cosmopolitan, or not as influenced maybe by American black music. You know what I mean? I think that maybe what I mean sometimes when I say that, because so much of American music is influenced by a variety of things, but certainly the influence of black culture, right, is a big piece of it. But sometimes there's these genres that almost that's the hallmark of them, right, that they don't share that lineage. But then of course the disco part of it throws it into there, so maybe it's a different lineage.
Well,
right?
Neil Tennant also sounds British when he sings too.
Yes.
I mean, that's a pretty, because not all British singers do that. I'm always amazed that sometimes you hear a British singer and they're like, man, I don't hear the accent, coming out at all. But this guy, you can definitely hear it.
There just aren't a lot of American male lead singers who are leaning into this sort of sad boy energy, right? There really are, especially in 1990. There really is a split when you think about it, that there's a lot of these sad boys, but they're all like European, right? And then the American, they're hair
coming.
metal.
The Americans are coming.
And that's what I'm saying. It comes. Look, that's what I'm saying. It comes, but like the lane is very much British at this point. I feel like there's more than you can shake your hat at, right? And then the American ones are coming.
Nick Drake was pretty sad a while ago.
Yeah, but that was 1970. You know what I mean? I'm talking in this era, 1990.
In this exact period of time.
There's a lot of fucking testosterone in American music right here. There aren't a lot of folks singing about feeling disconnected esoterically, right? That was not what American music was giving you, Even when people were sad boy, right? Like the Stevie B song we covered earlier, right? It's not in this lane, right? The disconnection. It's more direct, linear, male alpha right along the way. So I just thought I'd throw that in as well. So, but yeah, easy thumbs up for me. This was a good one. Two for two in terms of album we covered for me for the Pet Shop Boys.
Yeah, same. All right,